Retro.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 8 of the Corcoran Cap, the podcast where we're talking A's, Niners, Warriors, Syracuse, college sports, whatever you want to talk about, we got it right here. I am your host, Sam Corcoran. We are back after taking a week off last week. And Jake, baseball is also back. This is the first episode we are doing since baseball was in the lockout last time we did an episode. Now we are not. We are in full swing for spring training. Season is on track to happen. How are you feeling about that, man?
I mean, I feel great. There's so much to talk about. So much has happened in the last 2 weeks, especially with the A's more than basically any other team. I just can't wait to get into it.
Absolutely. And let's just jump right into it. Obviously, if you've been living under a rock for the past few weeks, we'll just tell you what happened. The A's traded Chris Bassett, Matt Olsen, Matt Chapman. 3 of our best players are now gone. We kind of talked about this. Jake and I talked about this on earlier episodes. That I think we were expecting Olsen to be gone. We're kind of expecting Bassett to be gone. Chapman surprised me a little bit. I thought they would keep Chapman. I guess the A's have other plans, but we're going to break down all these trades for you. And let's just start with how it started with the Chris Bassett trade, which happened almost right as the deadline, right as the lockout ended.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jake.
It seemed like a deal that was already in place, and they just pushed it through.
Exactly. Yeah. So the A's traded Chris Bassett to the New York Mets for 2 right-handing pitching prospects, JT Ginn and Adam Oller. JT Ginn, I believe he was the Mets. He's a top 20 prospect for the Mets, if I'm not mistaken. Is he?
Yeah, he was. I think he was. He might have been in the early teens, but he's
definitely somewhere in the early teens. He was their second-round pick in I think it was 2020. He was their second-round pick. Pretty solid right-handed pitcher from him, saying he's going to need a few more years. So it's looking really – I think this is a really good package for the Oakland A's. You get JT Ginn. I think Bassett is a guy who – I know he's been with the A's for a while. I know he's the ace. But in reality, Chris Bassett on most teams, especially the Mets, when you have probably the best pitching duo that MLB has ever seen behind them, he's going to be a great number 3, number 4 guy for the New York Mets, in my opinion. And that's really what most teams are valuing him as. No one's really valuing him as the ace. People want him as a number 2 or number 3 guy in the rotation. So the Mets are getting that, and they're getting the A's are getting 2 solid prospects. JT Ginn, as I just talked about, he'll develop a little bit in the minors. Adam Oller, he's 27 years old, prospect. He had a very good season last year, which does give me hope. He's a guy who could come up this year, maybe as a number 5 guy. I'm not expecting too much for him, but I think this is just a guy who can get you a few starts here, right off the bat. You can probably call him up. He can do a decent job for you. You're not really expecting too much of him, but hey, he's going to be a solid rotation guy. The main prize of this deal is JT Ginn.
Yeah, I mean, he's again like this. This is a trade that's not super impactful for the roster right now. Like you said, I mean, Ginn is a few years off, and even then he might have to get worked in the rotation like you see some guys doing, like Dalton Jeffries and James Kaprielian. So he might not be making an impact for 4 or 5 more years. But again, like the common theme with a lot of these trades is when the ballpark is expected to be in full swing or like coming to be, this team is going to come to fruition in the next 2, 3, 4 years. So they're looking farther in the future than we have in rebuilds in the past.
Absolutely. And JT Ginn, I believe, moves to our 6th best prospect if I'm looking at the list right now. It's not loading when he's projected to come up. All right, now it is. 2023 is where you're projecting A+ ball. He's 22 years old, so a very young guy. If you're getting a top 10 prospect in your farm system, I know the A's farm system wasn't really the best going into this. You only had 1 top 100 prospect. You have multiple now, so that's a good thing. We'll talk about the other guys that we got, but adding some prospect bulk is huge for the A's. A top 10 prospect in a group of guys that you got overall, a ton of prospects, where the majority of our top 10 prospects now are from the guys that we just acquired, which is pretty solid in my opinion.
Yeah, it again, like you said, it speaks to what our farm system was before, as it was pretty weak, and most of our first-round picks through the last few years have been unsuccessful. Is the nice way I'll put it. But it's nice to see our farm system fully stocked, and I don't think that this is the end of the moves that will bulk up that system.
100%. That's all I have on the Bassett trade. Let's move on to the big one that shocked the MLB, the Matt Olsen to the Atlanta Braves trade. And this, I know I was so upset when this happened. Like, Matt Olsen's gone, one of my favorite players to watch in Oakland. But the package we got for him is absolutely ridiculous. You have Christian Pache, Shane Langeliers, Ryan Cusick, and Joey Estes, I think it is his name.
Estes, yeah.
Estes, Joey Estes. That was 1, 2, 6, and 14 with Atlanta. They're now 2, 3, 8, and 16 with the A's. So very solid prospects. Pache and Langeliers should be coming up this year. Overall, I mean, I think this is a fantastic deal. And we've seen Pache at the MLB in spring training. He has so far been a fan favorite. The defense is what really stands out. I mean, you got to get the bats going a little bit. He's going to need a bit of development with that. But if he can develop into a hitter, he could be a 5-tool player, 100%. Fantastic defensive player. You look at a guy like Jackie Bradley Jr., who's back with the Red Sox now. That's a very similar comparison to him. Guy who struggles somewhat at the plate, but is amazing in the field right there. So I love that. I want to talk about, actually, I'll let you get a chance to talk about Pache and some of the other guys. I want to talk on one thing later on, though.
Yeah, well, I mean, Pache, the thing that jumps out, obviously, like you said, it's his defense and his speed. And he's a guy who he's going to be a Gold Glover, like, going forward, just forever. Like, and I think he's in the same mold as guys that we've developed in the past, like Chapman and Olsen, and then other guys that we're going to see coming up soon, like Nick Allen and Ramon Laureano. We saw like guys who are really, really productive defensively that we're hoping to develop a few tools with behind the plate. And I mean, even Chapman has not been that great a hitter, and we still fetched a few good prospects for him. So it just shows the level of respect that defense commands, especially when you're one of the top in the game. And you definitely see that with guys like Langeliers and Pache that are like, their defense is their calling card. And we're just hoping that we can develop that bat a little bit with some 500, 600 AB seasons.
Mm-hmm, definitely. And I think you can look at, I mean, I definitely like that from a guy like Pache as well. And Langeliers, I want to talk about him a bit more because right now, this is what's interesting. And I wonder how the A's are going to handle it. Right now, your top 2 prospects are catchers. And your best young player at the MLB level is also a catcher. So 3 catchers on one team. That's interesting to say the least. I think you might see another move coming forward. Maybe they're going to buy somebody who they want. Maybe if the A's somehow put on a good season, put on a great year, they start to contend a little bit, then I bet they might trade one of these guys, get a guy, use one of these prospects to move forward and get a bigger name. But it's interesting right now. I think Soderstrom at this point is safe. It's really between Murphy and Langeliers. How do you want to use those? Soderstrom's a 2024 guy, from the looks of the MLB pipeline. Langeliers is AAA right now, supposed to be up in 2022, whereas Murphy's already, I mean, he's kind of solidified himself as our catcher. So it's interesting to get him. I think they just wanted to get the best value possible. I don't think they were really looking for, okay, we just need guys who fit our positions. It's the minor leagues. You really just are looking for the best guys available. Where unlike the NBA or the NFL, you're looking for positional needs. You're trying to fill those holes that you have on this team. Right now, it's different when you're training a big guy away to get prospects. You don't really, if that makes any sense. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, you talked about Soderstrom, and from what I've heard, they're not seeing him as a catcher moving forward. They're going to pick one of the positions, whatever he feels most comfortable at, whether it be third base, kind of a Josh Donaldson type move, or maybe first or one of the corner outfield spots. But his bat, unlike the Langeliers and Murphy, is his best trait. So I'm really excited about that potential. And he's a switch hitter, right? So, I mean, he brings something different. Obviously, the team's going to look very different by 2024. But if I were to make a prediction, I think that Murphy doesn't last the rest of the year.
I want to correct you. It does not. It says on the pipeline that Langeliers is a right-handed hitter.
No. Soderstrom. Sorry.
Oh, Soderstrom, it says, is a left-handed hitter.
Oh, he's just pure left. Okay.
He's pure left. I think, is Murphy switch?
No.
He might. No, he's not. He's
no,
right-handed.
The only reason I say when I think of a left-handed hitting catcher, because they all catch right-handed, I always just kind of assume that they
That's like Stephen Vogt. Stephen Vogt was left-handed hitting, He wasn't a switch hitter, but left-handed batting, catching was right-handed. So, I mean, it's not that uncommon. So,
yeah, no. But yeah, I don't think Murphy is going to make it to the end of the year. I think if we get to the deadline and some teams have pretty big holes at catcher, which I think some of the top teams do. Like if you look at the Yankees,
it's hard to find a good catcher in baseball.
It's hard to find a guy, and especially if Murphy is hovering around that like 750, 800 OPS with the Gold Glove defense that he plays. He's a pretty special guy, and he has 4 more years with the team, including this year.
Yeah, you're going to get a massive package for him. In my opinion, if he plays well.
And I don't think, especially if Langeliers is ready to come up and play, we could just bring up Austin Allen or one of those backup guys to platoon with him and just see where that goes. I don't think I would be as heartbroken if we traded Murphy just because we have those other options. So not totally unexpected.
Definitely. It's going to be interesting to see what they do with that. I think that's going to be a question for down the line. And let's talk about the last trade that was made. And this is the one that I think I'm a bit unhappy with, the Matt Chapman trade. Matt Chapman for Gunnar Hoagland, who's now number 7 in the system, Kevin Smith, and then Zach Logue and Kirby Snead. If I'm looking at the prospect list, Gunnar Hoagland's the 7th best prospect. Kevin Smith is MLB ready. He's going to play this year, but he's number 15 right now. He's a shortstop, third baseman, and that's it for. I mean, not really anyone else in your top 20 right now. I also forgot to mention Adam Aller of the Chris Bassett trade is prospect number 25. Should be playing at the MLB level this year. Jake, I was surprised that the A's traded Matt Chapman. I thought they could get more in value for him at the trade deadline. He had a down year last year, which is why I think we were kind of expecting this price range for him. Not going to be too high. I think people are going to think the A's got robbed in this trade. I'm not surprised by that. I think the A's should have waited. I think they were just committed to blowing it up right then and there. They didn't want to risk it too much. And, it kind of gives me PTSD with the Donaldson trade because the last time we traded a third baseman to the Blue Jays, he won MVP and went on a tear. So I don't really know how to feel about this, man.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the big difference between Donaldson was already pretty established at the plate. He had he hit like 310 or something in his last year with the A's. So he was already had kind of flourished there where Chapman is kind of still trying to develop those traits. But I mean, the big piece here is Gunnar Hoagland, who, and it's no lie, it's no secret, the A's love college pitchers, and especially a guy coming out of the draft. He went to Wake Forest, right? He was going to be a top 5, top 10 pick until he got Tommy John and fell to the late first. So I think my prediction was that the A's really loved this guy, and this is what they needed to do in order to get him. But if they love him that much, I'm fine with it. It seems like the A's haven't had an ace like this, or like he could potentially become in a while. So
yeah, and he's only an A ball right now, single A ball, not A plus ball, single A ball, 2024 guy, 22 years old. There's a lot of development room for him. Yeah, I think that's something you see with a lot of. I think I like the variety of prospects they got. You got guys like Pache and Langeliers, who will probably come up this year. You got a guy like JT Jin and Gunnar Hoagland, and now in your top 10, who they're going to take some time to come up, but that's all right. Same with Kusick too, who is also in the Matt Olsen trade.
I mean, have you seen his numbers? I was looking at it when the trade happened. He pitched 16 innings last year in A ball and struck out 34 batters.
Yeah, I know that's ridiculous. So, yeah, I mean, I think overall I got to give the Olsen trade an A. Right now, I love the prospects we got back. Bassett trade, I'm gonna give a B plus. I think I wasn't expecting too much from this trade. It's a decent trade. I think it's a win-win deal. The Mets got the guy they wanted. The A's got the guys they wanted. Chapman, I'm gonna go. I know I was a bit harsh on it, but I'm gonna give it a B, maybe to B minus. Actually, I think B minus sounds a bit fair. I think overall it's a decent trade. You got a guy that the A's do love in Gunnar Hoagland. And I mean, that's all I really got to say about that. I think the other prospects, they're gonna need some development coming forward. I don't really know what to think of those other guys. From what I'm looking at, I don't see them in our top 20. Kevin Smith is 15, and then so we have a few guys in our top. We have 2 guys in our top 20 from that. But and then Zach Logue at 22 is the other guy. So I mean, all these guys besides one of the Chapman guys. that we got in all three of these trades are top 30 guys. So, I mean, I'll take it, but I think we could have got more from Matt Chapman.
Yeah, I mean, what I think is disappointing for me and why I would probably grade this trade a C, in my opinion, like obviously could go either way depending on how Matt Chapman develops in Toronto. It's just the fact that it seems like after that we got the guy that we wanted, which I think was Gunnar Hoagland. It seemed like we were trying to fill holes. Like we got that lefty reliever and we got like who's like 27 now, and we got Smith, who's like kind of a plug and play, not too flashy, like third base, shortstop, second base, kind of Chad Pinder-esque kind of player. So it's like it seemed like we were kind of trying to fill holes, which we don't need to do on this team. Like we're not going to win.
Exactly.
We're not going to make the playoffs. So it seemed kind of unnecessary, and like they were just trying to like throw players onto the roster just to, like kind of have them, which is pretty disappointing when you're giving up a guy like Chapman who, and like you said, like guys who go to Toronto have big offensive years. It's a much easier place to hit than Oakland. I mean, you saw Simeon pop last season. You saw the Donaldson thing. It seems like anyone who goes
even
there,
like Jose Bautista too. When he was in before Toronto, he was terrible.
And after.
But yeah, definitely. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with Matt Chapman. Obviously, wishing the best of luck to these guys. It's sad they couldn't finish with us, but that's A's baseball for you, to say the least. But anyways, coming up, segment number 2, talking about the Warriors. More of an up and down week for them. They've been struggling recently. Steph Curry is also injured. We got to talk about that. You won't want to miss out. Stay tuned. Welcome back to segment 2 on episode 8 of the Corcoran Cap. We just talked about the Oakland A's. Now we are talking about the Golden State Warriors. I am your host, Sam Corcoran. And as I said, we just talked about the A's. There was some bad news with the A's with some trades. And Joel, there's even worse news with the Warriors with Steph Curry being hurt, man.
Yeah, it's not – I'm not super scared because all of the MRIs and all the reviews have come back negative, and it's like a foot sprain. Granted, foot stuff – especially with Steph, who's had stuff with it. I mean, it doesn't sound like ankle, which is a bit of a relief because, you know, Steph has history with his ankles, but anything with the foot is a bit concerning because that's got to be right. Because if you've got an issue with your foot, you're definitely going to be feeling it. But what they're saying is they're going to, you know, check him out in 2 weeks. He said that he's optimistic on his outlook of being able to play prior to the playoffs starting. So it sounds, and honestly, the silver lining to it is, we've been asking Steph to do so much as of late, especially with Draymond out. Now that, you know, Steph gets, unfortunately, sort of a forced slight, 2-week break, it could give him a little bit of extra juice for the playoffs. But it's not, it's in terms of seeding, because we're not guaranteed the 3 seed at this point. There's a decent chance we could maybe even fall. It's definitely tough to have him out.
It's definitely tough. And you said it best. We have 10 games left in the season. It's 11. A very close playoff race. And we got to talk about it. So let's just breaking this down. Obviously, he got hurt against the Celtics in that play by Marcus Smart. I know a lot of Warriors fans are saying it's dirty, but come on. What else are you supposed to do when there's a loose ball? You got to dive for that, man. I don't think that's a dirty. I think he could have. I think could have been a better, but I don't think there was any intention for that.
I don't think it was intention, but it was a very reckless play. And I understand
it was a bit reckless. It was like the Vince Carter play against Patrick McCaw, and like Kerr was also fuming at Carter.
No, that was bad. That was really when the guy's in the air.
Well, no. Sorry, in the sense that it was a reckless. It wasn't intentional, but it was a bit reckless.
Okay, then yes. With that philosophy in mind, it's similar. Yes.
Yeah, no, it wasn't similar in terms of like the actual injuries. So
yeah, okay,
yeah,
that's true.
But yeah. Anyways, that happened. He's out, I believe, and definitely they said they're going to reevaluate in 2 weeks. So 2 weeks from, I think it was, they said Thursday they would probably reevaluate, right?
So I am an idiot, and I don't really know how months.
It was either Thursday or Friday, so that would be.
No. Is there a 30th in the month of March?
There is.
So it would probably. So if it's 2 weeks, maybe from the day after, it would probably be. Beginning of April when we maybe get like further news on him.
And the 30th, by the way, for that matter, March is a 31-day month. The 30th is the Suns game at home, which Joel and I were talking about off camera. So if Steph made it back for that, that would be amazing because we're going to need him there. But it's a rough blow. Thinking. Yeah,
that's wishful thinking.
Absolutely, it's a rough blow, especially going on a 5-game road trip to the East Coast, you're gonna have to rely on some other guys. And if these standings can load right now, which they're not for some reason, I mean, Orlando's one of the worst teams in the NBA. Washington's not that good. Memphis and Miami are going to be two very tough teams. Atlanta, I mean, they have Trae Young. I'm trying to find where they are in the.
They're a game under 500. They
are under 500. I was just trying to see where they are in the East.
The supporting cast for them has been really underwhelming this year for Atlanta, but it's Trae, and I think it's a good news that we have Gary Payton II coming back today, because he would be an ideal guy to definitely have in the mix to throw at him on defense. But I mean, Trae is one of the top, 20, 25 guys in the league. He's going to get his, one way or another.
Exactly. I mean, he'll do well. But I think it's overall, we'll talk about this road trip later. But I mean, obviously last week we did not do an episode because we wanted to do 2 special episodes with the Niners and March Madness. So we have a ton of news in these 2 weeks. That's just one of the things is Steph's injury. However, with Steph being hurt, we did get some good news. Draymond Green is back on the court, came back against Washington. Joel, how would you say his performances have been since he's been back?
Well, I was actually at the Washington game, and so I got to participate in the ovation when he came back and got to see him up close. And for anybody who hasn't been to a basketball game, not trying to sound spoiled or privileged or anything, there are different little factors you see with when you're in person seeing the guys play. Draymond, the level of energy and sort of sharpness he played with for having missed basically like 2 months and maybe even a little over it because he hadn't played since January, he looked really good. He was pushing the ball strong. He looked. The most important thing to me was that he looked physically 90+%. He looked very healthy. Which the worry was if that this back injury was something that was so severe that it would require surgery, and that if he came back prematurely, he would not look the same. And we obviously need a healthy Draymond if we're going to try and contend. The good news is that he does look pretty healthy and he does look pretty sharp.
Absolutely, and I think overall, I mean, obviously the stats never show Draymond Green's value on the team. Yeah. Never. That's just one thing. You never should look at stats when looking at Draymond Green. That's the same that goes for a guy like Dennis Rodman, one of the most loved players in NBA history, one of the most infamous players in NBA history, and also a guy that a lot of people just love his play style. But you look at those stats, and you just don't see why this guy's good. But obviously, he's one of the best players that the NBA has seen. I mean, yeah, that's all I really got to say about that. But Draymond being back, the impact has definitely been felt on this team. And I mean, you saw once Draymond went down, this team started to go downhill. Right now, the Warriors, I believe, are 3rd in the West.
We're 3rd. We got lucky in the sense that Utah lost yesterday to Brooklyn, so I think we still have like a 2-ish. I can check the standings, but we have a slight lead on them. But now we're a game and a half. Right now
we have a 2-game lead. 2.5 game lead ahead of Utah.
And then we're 1.5 games back of Memphis since we lost the Spurs game.
Exactly. But I also do want to point out right now, I know Denver, I know there's 10 games left. There's 5.5. I mean, there's 10 games left in the season.
Minnesota has been frisky. They're moving up the rankings.
I was going to say Minnesota's been frisky, and Denver's only they're 5.5 back of us. And, with a very rough end of the season, like that's something that, I mean, I never say never, man. That's all I'll say. I think the Warriors have, at this point, practically secured a spot into the playoffs, not the play-in game. At this point, they're going to avoid the play-in game. If they just got to win like a few more games, that's all they got to do. And when you teams like you, when you play teams like or go ahead.
Sorry, no, you finish up.
Well, I was just gonna say when you play teams like Orlando, Washington, Sacramento, New Orleans. I know New Orleans is like play in, but like they're well under 500. So, and even the Lakers too. Lakers are 31-41. They're going to be a play-in team, but still, I think overall, you're going to have a decent spot for the rest. A decent schedule for the rest of the season. They should be able to clinch a playoff spot by the time we record the next episode. But Draymond being back, I definitely think back to that point. I think they were going to clinch it without Draymond, with or without Draymond, but it's a lot easier to clinch it with him, and you can get it quicker. Then start resting guys for the playoffs. You can rest that. I mean, once you clinch that playoff spot, it doesn't really matter what happens to Steph when he needs to come back, because overall, I mean, they're going to have a tough matchup in the first round no matter what.
Yeah, this year's playoffs, it's really, I mean, the thing with the West is that the East is arguably deeper than the West, but because the Clippers, I can't really take the Clippers too seriously without their two best guys. The Lakers and Pelicans are in the play-in tournament. The Lakers suck, and the Pelicans the Pelicans had a run this year where they went like obscenely, I don't know the exact number, but the Pelicans have been rough for most of this year. I mean, but you look at, obviously there's the three top dogs, which are Suns, Grizzlies, Warriors. Then you've got the next step, which is Jazz, Dallas, Nuggets, Timberwolves. Timberwolves especially, they've been really good as of late. Towns is playing pretty lights out. I mean, I'm not a huge D'Angelo Russell guy, but he's given them what they need. Edwards is really, really explosive. He can go off, he's not the most steady. And in the playoffs, you'd have to think Minnesota would probably be your ideal matchup. Either them or maybe Dallas, because they can't punish you with size. But, I mean, I don't really want to play Minnesota. I mean, Edwards is going to have games where he goes for 12 to 15 points in a quarter and just electrifies target center and, he, can inflict fear. I mean, he is really strong. I mean, Towns not as dominating as Jokic, but Towns is he's the third best center in the NBA. He's right behind Embiid and Jokic, and he can punish us. I mean, having Draymond back helps because I think he can cover Towns at times. But, I mean, what's stopping him from averaging 28 and 12 against us in a series? I mean, there's no easy matchup in the first round. I think Dallas and Minnesota are the ideal ones. And, I mean, I don't think there's any way we play Utah, but Utah too. Because Utah
you could also get a 2 seed, and then the Clippers beat Minnesota in the first play-in game. That's a long shot. I just want to say.
Oh, you go. Yeah.
This is a bit off topic, and I'll let you talk. I just noticed this in the East standings. Right now, the play-in games for the Nets, they're the 8 seed. Yeah. If the season ended today, they would go to Toronto. If they lose that, they would have to host the game. Kyrie can't play for any of those games because I'm pretty sure you need a vaccine for Toronto and New York. How brutal would that be?
That would be.
Man.
You do need a vaccine for Toronto. Yeah, if that worked out the way that would be, it would be outstanding because I hate this whole Kyrie vaccination saga. I mean, I understand the perspective of it's a free country and he doesn't necessarily have to get it, but it's such a detriment to your teammates and to the organization. They are paying you so much money to go out there and compete, and you are limiting your ability to help the team by simply just refusing the vaccine. You're doing it
exactly. I don't want to get too off topic with that.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, back to what you were saying about the Warriors. Go ahead. I just noticed that in the East standing.
Yeah, with the West, I think it's unlikely we play Utah, but Utah's the sneaky one that I actually like maybe the most, in that they are perimeter oriented and we've got good perimeter defenders. They have a big guy in Gobert, but he's not your traditional big guy in the sense of he takes advantage of mismatches. We saw it in the Clippers series. They went 5 guys small, and they effectively were playing Gobert off the court, except Quinn Snyder wouldn't pull him off the court. They were just swinging it around the edge, and, I mean, Utah wasn't doing the best job because their rotations and closeouts weren't great, but Gobert was getting picked on, and I think we could pick on Gobert in a playoff series. Now, granted, don't love playing Utah. They've got a good home crowd, altitude. They can, have a game where they hit 23s or whatever. So, like I said, no easy matchups, but they're probably the sneaky, like, if that could somehow – the cards sometimes go that way. Maybe Mitchell misses the last couple games. They slip in the standings. That would be the, knock on wood, don't want anybody to get hurt. But you hope. Yeah,
I mean, Denver's only 3 games behind them. So that something could happen where they fall 6 or something.
It's exactly. I mean, they are 3.5 games back of the 7th seed. You said that the Warriors, when you brought up the idea of that we're locked out of the play-in thing, I think that's a certainty. We're 6 games ahead of that spot, and there's only 11 games left. And you look at our schedule, we've got the Pelicans, we've got the Spurs again, we've got the Kings, the Lakers, Wizards, Magic, Hawks. Those are not exactly dynamite, fear-instructing teams. If we can go 500 or better against those teams and, maybe catch a break and beat Utah at home or maybe steal it in Miami, you never know. But if you could steal 1 to 2 of the games against the superior competition and just go 500 or better against the inferior competition we have down the stretch, I think we're pretty much a lock to be a top 4 seed.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely think the stretch coming up, as we kind of talked about, there are some rough games, but there are a few games that you can definitely win. I think the games that you have to win are the games that, like the Orlando game tonight, which will be probably
Early tip-off.
7 p.m. tip-off. It'll probably be final by the time this episode goes up. So,
I mean, Eastern time, that game will probably be.
I don't know what time I'm posting this episode, but it's not going to be the 8 o'clock time. You guys are probably watching this well past 8. So, it's gonna be different. You gotta win that game. You should win the Wizards game. You gotta win the Sacramento game. You gotta win. I would say you gotta win the Lakers game too. I think
certainly have to win the Lakers game. Here's the thing that's funny. Other than last night, there was a stat of like the Lakers were 0-9. I guess now you could say they're 1-9 when LeBron doesn't score 50 points. They suck. They're not good. They're really bad. They beat us because they were shooting uncannily hot from 3, and because LeBron had 56 points, which is up until Towns and Kyrie had monster games, was tied for the most points scored in a game this year. So that's the reason we lost to the Lakers. The Lakers are a bad basketball team. They're not good. We're at home. We should beat them.
100%. You gotta win that game. Last thing before we go, I know we want to touch on this. Klay Thompson. He's been on a pretty good tear recently.
He's had some good games. He was really great against Milwaukee, and I would like to. He was pretty good against the Spurs last night. There's some volume involved in some of these games, but the important thing is that he's making shots as opposed to the last, like for example, the Laker loss, the loss against Denver. Some of the Dallas losses, like some of those games, Klay it feels like he couldn't hit anything. These games, at least he's hitting shots, which is definitely an empowering feeling. And you just feel like, because Klay and Draymond haven't played much together, when they maybe get in a slightly better rhythm, and as Klay just, goes further and further with getting more reps in, you like the signs of where things are going. It's trending upwards.
Yeah, exactly. It's always trending upward for the Warrior. I mean, it's been an up and down year. I mean, it's been an up year, obviously, but like at this point,
it's been an up year.
I think the way to put it, if Klay is trending upward, then this team is trending upward.
Sneaky, I just want to mention this last night, even though we lost the Spurs on a heartbreaker with some pretty questionable, and by questionable I mean,
oh yeah,
I'm not gonna say bad words because I was told not to, but some terrible calls you could say. And then, but Otto Porter off the bench had 16 points and 16 rebounds. And he only played, it was really impressive, 16 points and 16 rebounds. And, okay, it wasn't that limited action, but in 30 minutes. The last Warrior to do that off the bench was Corey Maggette back in 2009. That impressed me.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So, I mean, a great performance from Otto Porter. Road trip coming up. You got to win some games. We'll hopefully see that happen. Coming up, guys, segment number 3, 49ers. Been an interesting offseason for them. Rohit and I are going to review the offseason, recap everything, recap the signings, and tell you what's next for the Niners. You won't want to miss out. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Segment 3 of the Corcoran Cap, talking about the San Francisco 49ers. I'm your host, Sam Corcoran. To my right, Rohit Kannan. Rohit, I mean, it's the offseason. It's in full swing. What are your thoughts on the Niners offseason so far? Let's just jump right into it. First of all, how are you doing? And second of all, what are your thoughts on the Niners offseason so far?
Well, first of all, I'm doing pretty good. Hope you're doing pretty well too. But I think the Niners honestly have had a solid offseason. I mean, the main thing is probably one of the most glaring parts of our team, the weaknesses, was special teams. They've sorted that pretty well. Ray McLeod, solid returner. We signed a linebacker, I forgot his last name. It was like Orem or something like that.
We did. So we have George
names.
Odom.
Yeah, George Odom, solid special teams player. We also signed a safety from the Colts who has experience playing safety, but is also primarily a special teamer.
That is George Odom. Oh, sorry. The linebacker is Oren Burks. George Odom is the safety.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And then, obviously, our big-ticket signing for the offseason was Terrarius Ward, solid corner. He has good eyes, good instincts. He's one of the better corners in football, and I don't think he's really gotten the recognition that he should. So, all in all, the 49ers have made solid signings. I think a lot of people were expecting a much more type of splash signings like we had back in 2019. We signed a bunch of guys right out the bat and then signed a couple of guys here and there. That's not really what we're doing. It's more so just assessing our weaknesses and just trying to shore them up. And yes, the big glaring part is, hey, we have $25 million if we get rid of Garoppolo, but it's like, I don't think the Niners are in a rush to get rid of him.
The Niners, in my opinion, are not in a rush to get rid of them. As I said yesterday, and I was mistaken on this point that after June 1st, it's less money. It's the same amount of money. I was mistaken on that. But if the Niners keep Garoppolo, this is what I was thinking about Garoppolo. And I think we might talk about it more later, but I'll just make this quick. If the Niners are keeping Garoppolo, they're probably just going to wait until someone comes for him. And if no one does, they just cut him at the end of training camp, because eventually, if some team's quarterback gets hurt in training camp or something like that, teams are going to want Garoppolo. Someone's going to want Jimmy Garoppolo to be their starting quarterback on a 1-year deal. It could work out really well. But let's move into free agency, because that's what we're here to talk about. And as Rohit just hit the nail on the head right there, 5 guys that we can sign. And let's talk about Terrarius Ward right there. That was the prize of the offseason. And actually, before that, I want to go back to your point about like all our team needs. I think the needs were really special teams, getting a cornerback, getting a returner. I think we really just we really hit all our needs out of the park so far. And I think we're doing a very solid job with that. I think an edge could be the one thing we do need to add. Maybe they're looking at someone for the draft, but also safety. I don't know what Tart's situation is. So you could try to see what's up with him. But overall, the 49ers have really been killing it. I mean, I wouldn't say killing it. I think the Niners can do a bit more. But you have your cornerback one, Terrarius Ward. And he is probably, he's one of the more underrated corners in the game. Guess how old Terrarius Ward is, Rohit?
25, 26?
Yep, 25 years old. Got a lot of career left in for him. So I think the Niners, you got a young corner. This is a young corner, guys. There are a lot of guys, just for reference, Damon Arnett, when he was a first-round pick of the Raiders, guess how old he was?
24.
Yep. Terrarius Ward is 1 year older than Damon Arnett when he was with the Raiders. Right now, I think they're actually the same age. Maybe a year later. Damon Arnett obviously kind of flunked out of the league, but we got Terrarius Ward, a very solid cornerback, and a cornerback 1 for this team. You could say Emmanuel Mosley is cornerback 1, but I'm very confident that Terrarius Ward is a better cornerback than Emmanuel Mosley for this team. And you could move Mosley to slot. You could move Ambry Thomas to slot. But right now, I think your cornerback room is very set right now. You got your cornerback 1, 2, and 3. Nickel, you could address with K1 Williams, but I also think they can move one of those guys to nickel. Overall, I think the cornerback room is set, and this is something that the 49ers have not had for a while. Yeah.
This is honestly a very underrated cornerback group, in my opinion. Yes, obviously the big piece is Terrarius Ward, but when you look at the past couple of seasons, Emmanuel Mosley has been pretty solid. Ambry Thomas really picked it up towards the back half of the 2021 season. And wait, do we still have K1 Williams under contract?
We do not. He is currently a free agent.
Ooh, that could be interesting. Hopefully, we.
But I also just want to point out, Terrarius Ward is 25 years old. Okay, actually, these age. So I'll have to look this up while you talk, because these age things are wrong. Because I know Terrarius Ward is 25. It says he's almost 27 on this, so I'm gonna have to confirm that. But yeah, our cornerback class. I'll let you talk, Rohit. But I think our cornerback class is good.
Yeah, but you still have Diamondre Lenore in the back for depth. He's been solid. I don't know what happened towards the back half of the season. We didn't really see him much. Mostly kind of just saw him in special teams, or he was a healthy scratch. But I think he'll pick it up this season. This cornerback group has been surprisingly solid. Even if you just want to look at blind statistics, they've been top 10 in passing and pass defense for the past year. They were only giving up. They were maybe like 8th in passing yards allowed, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. It's kind of. It's definitely really good. And I just want to bring back the age thing. You have Terrarius Ward, who is 25 years old. He'd be 26 going into the season. K1 Williams, he is 30, going to be 31 into the season. Emmanuel Mosley, if I look that up right now, he is 25, going to be 26 into the season. So the Niners have a very young group of cornerbacks right now. And, cornerbacks don't last that long in this league. Honestly, like Josh Norman, you saw him last year. He's old. He's not that good. K1 Williams should be on the decline. It was a down year for him last year. He's going to be on the decline. Jason Verrett, I think you're kind of expecting the decline for him with all the injury stuff. All our cornerbacks we had last year could be on the decline. The ones we have now are going to be on the rise soon. And I like this a lot. And also,
I agree.
Go ahead.
Corner is probably the one position where you want high quality young guys at all times. with other positions, you could be like, there's also, if with most other positions, you could be like, they're probably going to get better with age. With corner, it's more so just, oh, they're kind of getting up there. Can you actually sustain this? That's kind of interesting, something that I've kind of noticed.
Exactly. Definitely something to watch out for. Now, I think the other needs that we filled were special teams. And there are 3 guys we got, really. You got Oren Burks, George Odom, and Ray McLeod. Ray McLeod could also be a good wide receiver 4 as well, maybe 5. You're not going to see him. I don't think you'll see him much in the passing game. You're going to see him a lot in the return game because he's one of the best return men in the league. Somebody who I think we might have talked about. I don't really know. If I'm kind of forgetting. I feel like we might have talked about him on an episode for a good return guy. It's funny. Most of the guys that we signed, we definitely talked about Terrarius Ward for a little bit, but most of the guys that we signed were not really guys on our radar. George Odom, Oren Burks, 2 guys I've never really heard of, but they're special teams aces. And that is something the 49ers need. And it's hard to be disappointed with the 49ers signings. And I think the other guy we got, Hassan Ridgeway, solid defensive tackle, going to be a depth piece. You're probably looking at this is the guy for Mo Hurst's replacement, or Contavious Street, I should say. Contavious Street, I believe, left for New Orleans. So yeah, we'll talk about all those signs right now. But overall, I think I'm very happy with how we improved on special teams.
Yeah.
Also, young guys too. 28 for George Odom, 26 for Oren Burks, 25 for Ray McLeod. And I think actually they're actually younger because what I have here, it says Terrarius Ward is 26.8. He'll be 26.8 once the season ends.
Wow. I mean, we got young guys. We got young guys on long-term contracts. The 49ers are going to be set up for the future pretty nicely.
Absolutely. And I think it's a solid offseason. There is a lot more work to do, but this is a fantastic start in my opinion, and you can't complain too much. And you also have the draft. We have two third-round picks. We have a second-round pick. I'm trying to think what other comp picks we got, but I know we don't have our first. I know we don't have one of the comp thirds, but we do have another comp third on top of our normal third-round pick. So I think we're looking really good for the future with draft. I think you can make a move up in the draft, get a solid guy. You can probably move up from 61 if you want to. I need to do more draft research, so I'm not going to give you guys any guys I want at the moment. But overall, I definitely think you can make a big splash in the draft.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, we talked about the guys we signed for a solid 10 minutes. Let's talk about the guys who left. And I'll ask you if there's any surprises, Rohit, but let me go through the list right now. Trent Cannon from the Niners to the Titans. There's another special teams ace that we got. Who's gone, but I'm not too worried about that. We got 2 more special teams aces to replace him, so not the biggest deal. Actually, 3 because he returned as well. So Ray McLeod absolutely counts as that. Laken Tomlinson of the New York Jets. I think you and I talked about that. We were not surprised by this whatsoever. We had him leaving. Most people had him leaving, and he did end up leaving. And it's Aaron Banks' time in San Francisco. Raheem Mostert, another guy we weren't really surprised to leave, taking a deal with the Miami Dolphins. I think that's a better fit for him, in my opinion. Will he succeed? I don't really know. I'm a bit skeptical of him and his injury history, but we'll see what happens there. Trent Sherfield also following suit with Raheem Mostert to team up with Wes Welker, the wide receiver coach there. Tom Compton in Denver and DJ Jones. And let's talk about DJ Jones also in Denver because this is probably the biggest loss of the offseason for the 49ers. I thought the 49ers could totally retain him. I think it's 3 years, $30 million. That's $10 million a year for a very solid defensive tackle. When you see guys like Fletcher Cox going for $14 million, a guy I am very low on, I think DJ Jones is absolutely affordable for this team. And I think the 49ers should have brought him back. But you know what? I guess he wanted to take more money with Denver. I don't know. Maybe they'll have a situation. I bet they want to put their faith in Javon Kinlaw is my theory. Do I want to do that if I were the 49ers? No, because of the knee issues. But I think you can sign. I think Hassan Ridgeway is a decent piece to bring in. He's not really going to be a starting defensive tackle. He's more of a depth piece, but you can probably get a better depth piece in the draft as well. A guy who can start next to Kinlaw. Maybe you move Armstead there and go Armstead and get another guy at defensive tackle or defensive end. This is our D-line depth, I will say, is getting a lot weaker as we speak. And I think that's something that needs to be addressed because that is the heart and soul of this team.
Yeah, this team was built from the trenches on both sides, offensive and defensive line. I think the Niners will go pretty heavy on defensive line, especially with their day 2 and day 3 picks. I don't think they're going to use 61 on a defensive lineman, but definitely look for the 3rd round picks and maybe the 5th and 6th round picks to end up being defensive linemen. But honestly, I'm surprised that we didn't pursue DJ Jones, especially at $10 million annual. Maybe the 49ers were trying to get him a bit cheap, maybe a bit more team friendly. I'm not sure. But all the other signings we both predicted, and honestly, when I saw Laken Thompson contract, I'm like, yeah, there's no way San Francisco was giving him over $14 million annual.
Yeah, exactly. I think that Laken Tomlinson, I'm really glad. I'm really glad we did not sign him there. I thought he should have been in a better system. You drafted the guy in the 2nd round. Did not start at all last year. He should be starting year 2. I think it's that simple with Aaron Banks. Oh, yeah, Aaron Banks right there. So overall,
he's going to be playing his more position, and I think that's why he's going to improve this year.
100%. Before we move on to the next topic, Rohit, quick grade on the offseason so far. What you got?
Honestly, I'm giving it a solid B+. Shoring up weaknesses. They didn't necessarily overpay for anybody. I mean, yes, the losses to the defensive line are huge. Losing DJ Jones is massive, but Chris Kosurik is one of, if not the best defensive line coach in the entire NFL. We still have a lot of offseason left. There's still some time to get more players. There's always the draft. You could also see some hidden gems pull up during OTAs, training camp, preseason. So there's a lot of time to see what goes on.
Absolutely.
There's always a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
So
100%.
So far, so good. Shoring up weaknesses, and if anything, one of our weaknesses might be a strength now, especially with the special teams coordinator hirings and now the special teams signings.
Yeah, special teams is bolster up. The cornerback room is bolster up. For me, I'm going to give it a B. I think it's a good start to the offseason. There needs to be more done, though. And I think one of those things, we'll get right into it right now, Jimmy Garoppolo. The situation with him, that has to be solved, in my opinion. I said we can hold on to him. We can do that. I think we just need to know a definitive answer going forward with what to do with Jimmy Garoppolo. Right now, I think you got to keep him, in my opinion. See what teams can give you for that. I know you have $25 million cap, but let's be realistic. Is there a guy out there that you're going to spend $25 million on right now?
No. Why would
exactly?
You?
The Niners can use the cap they have right now to get all the pieces they need plus more. When you cut Jimmy Garoppolo, yeah, you have a bit more flexibility, but it doesn't matter how much cap you end up with. It matters how that performance is on the field. So I know everyone's like, cut Garoppolo. I say you wait it out. See if you can get some value for him at least. And if you don't, you just come during training camp. That's simple.
Yeah, exactly. Moreover, the money from Garoppolo's contract is probably already earmarked for a Debo or Bosa extension.
Absolutely. I mean, you got to come at some point, but if you keep him for now, it's not going to be the end of the world. Coming up, segment 4 of this 8th episode of the Corcoran Cap. We're not talking about Syracuse. We're talking about March Madness because it is March. We have to get into it, of course. In-person podcast again. You won't want to miss it. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Segment 4 of the Corcoran Cap. Talking about March Madness this time. A bit of a switch up. We usually talk about Syracuse, but this time we're talking March Madness because that's more important right now, in my opinion. I'm your host, Sam Corcoran. Sitting to my right, literally sitting to my right, is Zach Copeman. Zach, how you doing today?
Doing all right. I just got back from spring break, so kind of tired of the work already.
Yeah, everyone's tired, but you know what? The grind never stops. So we're ready to get to it. It has been a busy week in sports. As you can tell by the nature of this episode, this is the 4th segment of the episode, and this is one of the biggest events going on in the country right now, March Madness. So we're going to just break down our thoughts on the tournament so far. It's been a fantastic tournament, as Zach can probably attest to. And I mean, I think just give me your overall spiel of the tournament, Zach. How has it been for you watching it and everything? What have been some exciting moments?
It's been crazy this year. Obviously, I'm sure we'll get to St. Peter's, but big upset coming from New Jersey. St. Peter's is pretty local to me, so I find myself rooting for them. I'm excited to see UNC winning. Granted, I grew up a UNC fan, and I root for their upsets. I had them going to the Final Four.
You did tweet out that you didn't get into USC, and 2, now you're out of rival schools. So
yeah, I am. Funny. But I find myself still rooting for them. I think they're a well-crafted team. I think we could get in a little bit to their, I guess, upset of Baylor. They were up at 25. They were up 25 at a point. Obviously, Brady Manick gets ejected. Go back down. Game goes to overtime. It's a close game. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely like that game. That game was a very fun game to watch. I will say, and you brought up a good point with Brady Manick and him getting ejected. The refs this tournament have been absolutely atrocious as of recently. You had the Manick ejection, which should not have happened. You had the Keegan Murray, I believe, got fouled on a shot that wasn't called. That couldn't. That should have been switched up. TCU, I know, was very furious with the refs.
And there was a Houston player, I think, who hung on the rim.
It was Houston. It was Houston. I think it was against. Was it Illinois their first game? Second game. My bad. But it was that was kind of ridiculous. And I mean, in my opinion, the reffing just needs to change up a bit. I don't know what it is with it. Maybe it's.
Yeah, the one game I really watched closely was the UNC Baylor game because I had a lot riding on that game. Financially, tournament-wise, my brackets. Obviously, still a fan. I like UNC in this tournament. I thought they had a good chance. They obviously won, but yeah, the ejection was kind of crazy. Definitely turned the tide of the game. I mean, obviously, blowing a 25-point lead, that's not something that can happen continuing in the tournament for UNC. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think it's perfect example of that shouldn't have been a flagrant 2. The refs got to step it up.
Yeah, absolutely. There's just a ton of stuff that needs to be happening overall for this tournament to just be better. I think the play of this tournament has been absolutely fantastic, but overall, I think the refs can make this tournament an even more memorable one. And one thing that we are going to remember is the upsets this tournament, some of the biggest surprises. And I think we can just start off with the one that's just flashing right at you, the St. Peter's Peacocks of Jersey City, New Jersey. Shout out to you, Zach. But, I mean, they've just been, first of all, to beat Kentucky was a team. In my opinion, that was a lock, in my opinion, for Kentucky to win that game. Out of all the 2 seeds, I thought Kentucky would for sure win that game.
And I thought Kentucky was the best of the 2 seeds. So seeing St. Peter's, a lot of fight under a head coach who is going to get the Seton Hall job, but his name is escaping me. He was a former Seton Hall player. I'm looking this up right now because, I was on him all weekend.
Yeah, I mean, St. Peter's has just been on a tear. Won to beat Kentucky, a team that I had in the championship game. If you guys saw our March Madness, if you guys saw our March Madness preview, I think all 3 of us, Austin, Zach, and I,
we might not even have brought up the game just because 15 seeds they rarely ever win. But Shaheen Holloway, that's his name, by the way.
Yeah,
has his team playing incredible basketball. You see some of his offensive sets; they run them to perfection. Obviously. Eddert's been good down the stretch. Yeah. I don't think he's their best player. They got a few good guys in their starting lineup who have just been absolutely electric. It's not really like this Oral Roberts team from last year where it's they had their 2 guys and they were really, really good.
It's a pretty deep team.
They're a pretty deep team. They're a balanced team, and they play well and they play for their coach. So
absolutely. It's definitely a fun team to watch. So that's one of the biggest surprises. I think another big surprise so far in this tournament. Let's talk about. Let's talk about North Carolina. I think you said that Baylor was going to beat. You said North Carolina was going to beat Baylor. To me, it's definitely surprising. They didn't really do much overall. They didn't have many quad 1 wins overall. They went out very early in the ACC tournament to Virginia Tech to absolutely dominate Marquette. Was definitely something I wasn't expecting. I didn't predict them to win, but domination. That was not what I expected. And then to put up a lot of points against one of the best defensive teams in the country, that was really surprising to me. I thought they had a chance to win, but I didn't think they were going to win like that.
Yeah. What I like about this UNC team is how they're built. They're built to be a tournament team. Obviously, Leaky Black. Can't say enough about him. He's the type of glue guy you want on your team. Super great defensively. He can make a few big shots down the stretch. Not really a 3-point shooter, not really an offensive player, but he's the glue guy on that team. Caleb Love didn't have his best game, but he still, you saw when he went out with the fouls, still so important to that team as a playmaker, as an offensive initiator, even when he's not putting up numbers. Brady Manick, what more can you say about him? Great scorer. And just Bacat, every player on that team. And they have a player coming off the bench who's a freshman, gave him great minutes that game. And I did tweet out that I think he was a better player than he's a better recruit than Benny Williams. I'll pull this up right now because I obviously just came from class. I don't have my notes all organized, but Dontrez Styles coming off the bench. He's going to be a good player in a few years.
Oh, he is, definitely. I definitely think this UNC team has a very bright future ahead of them. Having this tournament run is definitely something big. I think another team that I think you might be surprised by. I had this team winning, Iowa State. I think it was more Austin in particular that was very disappointed with this pick for me, Iowa State over Wisconsin. Are you surprised by that at all?
I saw them come on in their first game. Was happy with how they played, but I didn't really see them beating Wisconsin. And I'm a vocal opponent of the Big Ten. I think Johnny Davis is probably one of the 2 best players in the Big Ten, one of the 3 best players in the Big Ten. So I was a little surprised. I was a little less surprised by the Miami upset on the other side of that bracket over Auburn. I did have that. Austin kind of talked me out of that too. So you see how he's kind of getting into our heads. But yeah, Auburn losing and Wisconsin losing. So now you get a matchup between Iowa State and Miami, which I think is going to be a good game. Iowa State's pretty good defensively. Miami has been playing well offensively, so it's going to be a good matchup.
100%. I definitely think that's going to be a key matchup. And good luck. Purdue. They're not in that region, but I think Purdue is another team.
Purdue has to play St. Peter's.
They do have to play St. Peter's. I don't know why I thought a different region, but I know Purdue. I'm kind of jumping around here, but I know Purdue in their region, they have a pretty easy shot to get to the Final Four. And in the region we were talking about, Iowa State, Miami, I think that's the UCLA UNC game. Is that what I'm talking about? So
I'm gonna
one of those teams. So those are 3 teams that have really surprised a lot of people, and one of those guys could be going to the Final Four.
Yeah,
now
you're gonna have the winner of Kansas Providence is gonna play the winner of Iowa State Miami for the.
Oh, okay. I'm getting my regions wrong and everything.
Yeah. So Purdue most likely. I'd love to see St. Peter's make it to the Elite Eight, but it's gonna play the winner of UCLA
and UNC.
UNC, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think let's move on now to teams that have disappointed, because obviously there are some notable teams that are not in the Sweet 16. I want to start off with the Iowa Hawkeyes. You were just talking about Johnny Davis being one of the best players in the Big Ten, and Keegan Murray is also another one of those top players in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
And after winning the Big Ten tournament, to go out to Richmond, a school that wasn't even supposed to make the tournament, is a massive disappointment for Iowa, and they should have won that game, in my opinion.
And especially seeing how Providence killed Richmond the next week.
Yeah.
That's a team you can't lose to in retrospect. In the moment either. Keegan Murray, obviously, as you said, one of the best players in the Big Ten. Defensively and offensively, I think he's probably the best wing defender in the Big Ten. Mm-hmm. Great scorer. He's going to be a lottery pick, in my opinion. And it's a pretty built roster in Iowa. I thought if there's one Big Ten team that's going to have a tough time making a run but could make a run, it's going to be Iowa. And they lose in the round of 64. That's a huge disappointment, in my opinion.
Second Big Ten champion. Oh, wait, no, Illinois won last year, not Ohio State. But still, I'm getting my Big Ten facts wrong. But anyways, that's just a massive disappointment. I know we could talk about Kentucky. We kind of talked about that game. I think that was obvious. I didn't want to talk about it too much because it's kind of just obviously out there. Who's the other 5? Oh, who was the other? Was it UConn that lost?
UConn did lose very early. They lost to New Mexico State, who – I like New Mexico State. I called that in the other podcast. Said you got a guy who's an incredible scorer. They play hard. Obviously, they lost, but I thought they matched up well against UConn, and they did lose. Teddy Allen, incredible scorer, and he showed up against UConn. What I do want to bring up to you is one Big Ten team left. You had a pretty hot take last week that the Big Ten's the best conference in college basketball. Where are you standing on that now? Because there's 3 ACC teams left, and the ACC was having what people called a down year.
Yeah, it's kind of surprising. The two conferences that everyone said were the best, Big Ten and SEC. SEC, I believe, only has 1 team left. Big Ten has 2 teams left. Michigan. Yeah, Michigan. Yeah. Another big surprise in this tournament. Michigan moving on after a 17 and 14 year. No Juwan Howard. They did get who's the guy?
No, Juwan Howard. Juwan Howard's coaching in the tournament.
Well, no Juwan Howard earlier.
Exactly.
But yeah. Tennessee going out was brutal. Only one SEC team left, and that's Arkansas. Yeah. So and Arkansas is a good team. I think they can make a further run. Mm-hmm. But I think right now you got to give it to a team. Big East also. Big East has 2 teams. I think you could give it to the Big East. You could give it ACC. Obviously, I know people were saying it's a down year, but Miami's still there. Notre Dame won their first game.
Yeah.
UNC still here. Duke's still here.
Quick question: You look at the Sweet 16, the field that's left in play. Who out of every division who is making the Final Four right now? Not even the Elite Eight, just right to the Final Four.
Right now, if you're looking at the Final Four, I still got Arkansas making it in the West. That was my prediction earlier. I think that will still happen. The East, I think I'm gonna go. I think I'm gonna go Purdue, man. I know we're not. I know we're very low on the Big Ten.
Well, I am. I don't know about you.
I think everyone is really. But Purdue, I think Purdue can beat St. Peter's. Then you got a UCLA team. I think the UCLA should be their toughest matchup if they play that. I think they should get by UNC, but I think Purdue should have a pretty easy. I was saying earlier, I think Purdue's got the easiest chance out of all of these to make the Final Four.
Yep.
They have to capitalize on it if they want to be. The Big Ten, a lot of people have been laughing at them for not doing well. They got to show out, represent the Big Ten. And a lot of people, throughout the season, we're not really taking Purdue that seriously. So I definitely think they got to do that. Looking at the South, I'm going to go with a bit of I'm going Villanova here, but I think they're going to play Houston, not Arizona. I love this Houston team right now. They're a very consistent team.
Yep.
And they dominated Illinois, dominated UAB. I think they will. I think they can put up a very good contest against an Arizona team who's taken to overtime by TCU. And I think Villanova will come out of this. They were my prediction to win the championship, but a Villanova-Houston matchup in the Elite Eight will be very fun to watch. Midwest, still going to go Kansas. That was my prediction earlier on.
Yep. All right. I'm gonna disagree with most of your picks here.
Okay.
Obviously. Out of the West, I think is going to be the most contentious. Obviously, you have the top 4 seeds left, and they're all really good teams. I have trouble picking Arkansas after what we saw from them last year. They're a pretty similarly built team, in my opinion, at least. I think they might be a little deeper, a little more experienced. Obviously, most of the players on this team have last year's tournament experience to add on to this year's. I'm still going to go. I'm going to go Texas Tech out of the West. I think they might be the least favored out of the 4 teams remaining,
which surprises me.
But they're a good team. They play well, and they're out there to win games.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to skip over the East for a minute. I think most of you know my pick is going to be UNC, but I'll get back to why. I have Arizona coming out of the South. They're my favorites to win the tournament. Benedict Mathurin, I believe that's how you say his name.
Mm-hmm.
Incredible player. I think he could win tournament MVP. I think this Arizona team, even though they were taken in overtime by TCU, I think at the end of games they're going to pull it out no matter what. Midwest, I'm going to go Kansas. I say they play Iowa State in the Elite Eight and pull it out against them, even though I think Iowa State's a pretty good defensive team. I think they're going to roll Providence. I didn't have Providence making it this far. They're a nice little story, even though they're a 4 seed.
Mm-hmm. And not many people did either.
Yeah, I think they're going to roll Providence, and I think they're going to have a tougher time against Iowa State and still make it. So you got 2 1 seeds playing in the Final Four. But coming back to UNC, I just like how they match up against every single team that they have coming up. Obviously, UCLA had a nice little miracle run last year. I believe they're the Final Four. They're not the same team. They're making another run this year. They're a 4 seed, though. I like how they match up against UCLA. And against Purdue, I think they're a more well-rounded roster than Purdue, and that might be a tough take. Considering Travion Williams, one of the better bigs in the Big Ten, Zach Edey obviously is very good, and UNC only really has one really good big in Armando Bacot.
Mm-hmm.
But I think UCLA, besides obviously Jaden Ivey's an incredible player, but you're going to get more consistent guard play out of the backcourt of UNC. Obviously Brady Manick, incredible scorer. I don't know who's stopping him on Purdue.
Yeah.
I have UNC making my Final Four here.
I can totally see that as well. I think any of those teams besides St. Peter's, I would not be surprised for them to come out of the East. Overall, I'm going to still pick my winner still to be Villanova. I predicted them earlier to beat I think it was Kentucky actually, but obviously that's not happening.
Kentucky would be coming out of the Midwest, I believe.
Yes, they would.
So yeah, you probably had someone else, but you probably
I'd Villanova it would be Villanova, Kansas for me right now.
Okay,
instead of Kentucky.
Yeah, I think I have realistic with my Final Four. I have Arizona actually playing UNC and beating UNC very handily.
Mm-hmm.
I think they match up. UNC is going to run out of luck eventually. I think they could beat a Texas Tech team that I think is definitely better than them.
Yeah,
but I think they'll run out of luck if they have to play Texas Tech and then Arizona. I think if they have to play any of the teams from the West, they're going to have a tough time making the Final Four. Or after they make the Final Four, they're going to have a tough time no matter what. But we'll see. Still a lot of tournament left to go.
Lots of tournament left to go. I mean, this is March. This is where all the madness happens. Guys, that is going to do it for the episode. Thank you all so much for watching. Make sure to follow Zach's Twitter right down there at ZCope3. Follow me at _Sam Corcoran. Also, make sure to follow Rohit at RohitKanan71, Joel Pettit 10. And thank you guys all so much for watching. We will be back next week, probably with another March Madness recap. Excited to talk about that. But that is going to do it, and I will see you guys next week. See ya.